Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TCG Talk. Today we're going to be doing another video leading into the US national event this weekend. I wanted to give my reactions to what happened at the UK National Championships. It's a little late, but I was just swamped with work this week, so I wasn't able to make the video. Um, Mainly going to be talking about, the top eight. So we'll talk about some good things, and then we'll talk a little bit about what happened during the event as far as, what some would label as misplays, what some would label as nefarious things that players were doing purposefully or on accident, right? We'll talk about those, at a glance, so to speak. The one thing I want to say before getting to this video is I'm not pointing fingers during this video. I'm not going to talk about the individual players themselves. I might show a player or two from the stream just to kind of give people examples, but this video isn't to like call out or give my take or opinion on if a player is guilty of cheating or if they were just doing it unintentionally or whatever. That's not the point. The point of the video is to address, some common things that happen in this game, both at a high competitive level and at a local level. If you're just playing at your local army event, and hopefully, whether you're an experienced player or whether you are a seasoned veteran, you can understand what we need to do collectively as a community to help fix this, right? Because pointing fingers, like leave the like on purpose or not on purpose thing to LSS. They will do their investigation. They will deem what they deem to be appropriate for the actions taken, whether it's nothing, whether it's a lot, it doesn't matter. Let them handle that. And because us trying to handle it, like all we're going to be doing is making the community more toxic, and it just isn't a good look for us. But yeah, getting into it, you know, I wanted to show kind of what their response was. So they said, "Thank you for the team at Living Realms for hosting the UK National Championships and all the players who attend the event. We're currently investigating some gameplay of the tournament. We realize the level of interest in this event is very high, but it's important that we ensure a fair process as we conduct this investigation. We'll let you know as soon as we have concluded this process. Thank you for your patience." So they put out a statement stating that they were going to look into what happened, look into the VODs, look into not only the players' play, but the judge quality as well. From what I've heard, a lot of the judges at this event were new, which is completely understandable considering how new the scene is in the UK and in Europe in general. From what I've seen, like the EU is kind of like the newest scene out of the three major regions: New Zealand, us, the US, and then EU. So like you're not going to have these seasoned veterans who've been playing forever also judging. Some of the seasoned players are probably still playing, and they're working on the judging system as well. So there's two ways you can look at this, right? There is the player aspect, which is we need to grow and be better as players, which we'll talk about here in a second. And there's the judge aspect. I hope that in the future LSS projects, the pluses and the prestige and the maybe even rewards that comes with being a judge, so they can entice those more seasoned players to play. Because even if you know the game really well, even if you pass the level one judge exam or whatever it is, the assessment portion that they do in order to become a level one judge, if you haven't played the game, you sometimes don't know what to look for, right? Like both, you could take two level one judges. One of them, let's say, played 1,000 hours of the game, and one's played 50 hours of the game, 100 hours of the game. They both technically know the rule set, but one might not know what to look for innately with some matchups, right? Like I saw one video, I forgot the gentleman's name. He was doing the same breakdown as this, and he talked about like Teklo Cord, like in Dash, not being able to trigger that unless you've boosted that turn. That's something that someone who's played the game a long time and has played against Dash, has played as Dash, already knows. Like it's just second nature to them, right? But someone that maybe hasn't played the game a whole lot or hasn't had a lot of experience with Dash, when that play doesn't happen, or when Tekla Core is or Tekla Foundry Heart, sorry, is activated without boost, they're not even thinking about it, right? So they have to look for that mistake. Whereas a player who's played a lot already knows that's a mistake innately. So that's one thing. The judge play, and as far as the judge play, like don't hit on the judges. That'll get better. Like as the game gets more mature, as we have more events, more things go on, the judge play is going to continue to rise. It's already at a fantastic level for how young the game is, and it's just going to get better than that. And so we need to not be so hard on that. People don't realize, like, I come from the esports community, which is a little bit different. Obviously, in TCG, there are some esports within TCG, right? Like Hearthstone and a couple and online Magic and stuff like that. But in esports, is the same way, where like people don't realize how young some of these scenes are and how much time it takes to develop those things. And with COVID, it put an even bigger hamper on a lot of things because people couldn't do in-person events and people couldn't really build the game out, especially with a game like Flesh and Blood, which is literally only played in person. It's not played online. So they can't even, you actually have to do in-person things to build out that system. So give them a little bit of time. The judges will get better, and the system will get better. Like it's only going to go up, and it's already at a good level. Obviously, this was a minor setback, and but I think things will get better. So please don't worry about that. The second piece is the player piece. I saw so many arguments and so many things pop up, in the Fab Discord and just local community chats and stuff like that about if players are being nefarious and doing it on purpose or if they're doing it by accident. You can point fingers all day and you can try to give your opinion, but you're never going to know at the end of the day. So just leave that to the people who actually have the authority to make that decision. One thing I can say is when it comes to misplays and mistriggers, there's two long-standing things you need to know as a player, right? One, if you're across the table from someone and they miss a trigger or they miss something that they're supposed to be doing, there's two types of triggers that are missed. There's positive triggers for your opponent, like an embodiment of Earth token if they're playing Briar, right? If they miss that trigger, is it on you as the opponent to call that out? No, it's not, right? But if you put a pummel down and it hits them and they don't discard two cards, yes, should they be doing it innately? 100%. But if they're playing a gentleman's game and playing it properly, but it's also on you to announce that trigger. With me, when I play, even against a seasoned player, which I've played several, it's like I still announce all my triggers, even though I know in the back of in my head, that they know what those mean. You still announce them because one, it shows that you're in tune with what is going on in the game state, and two, it reminds them and in a polite way forces them to do the trigger, right? Like if I'm playing Katsu and I put down a snatch and it hits, I'm gonna be like, all right, I'm drawing a card. Snatch hits, draw a card, right? So I like announce that trigger, right? If ball lightning hits, I'm like, all right, ball lightning hit for 2. Ball lightning's effect gives it +1 to hit for 3. I'll say all that out loud, and that's not to insult the opponent's intelligence level. It's to make sure that we are not missing anything. I just do that naturally. I did that since I started playing the game, and it's something that every player should be doing. And if every player announced every trigger, you would hardly ever miss anything. And you don't have to do it to a nauseate effect and like say every little word, but just give a passive like nod, passive, comment saying like, hey, this did this. Okay, this does this. Got it. Bam. And it just makes it easy for everyone. I'm going to show 3 different misplays that the opponents did. And so the first one is the dice. This isn't a misplay. This is something that everybody was talking about. This gentleman had a dice on top of the table to help remember his tunic trigger. This is something that I haven't even came into contact with since I've been playing the game, and it's a very interesting thing because when you're playing against someone, it's very odd, right? Like, okay, he has this big dice, he's trying to see if he doesn't miss his tunic trigger. What should we be doing, right? Should we be sorry about that. Should we be allowing this? Should I not allow this? Should I call a judge? This is something where as an opponent, you're going to be a little bit confused on what you should be doing, right? And I guess this kind of starts the narrative that I want to bring up, which is always calling a judge isn't a hit on your opponent, and it isn't like disrespecting your opponent. It's literally making sure that you both are playing the game the way it's meant to be intended, right? If I see that dice, I'm gonna be like, "Is that allowed?" And even if they're confident, like, "Yeah, it's allowed. I've played with it before," I'll be like, "You know what, man? No harm to you. I just want to call a judge over us to make sure we're playing this properly. I don't want either of us to get a ban or either of us to get a penalty or anything negatively happen to us. I'm gonna call a judge real quick and be like, Judge, is this okay? Because he would have honestly said no. Or if the judge missed it on stream, then that's the thing on the judge side of things. Like, right, they're gonna get better. But this is a play that is something where it's like not obviously wrong. It's just like this is one of those things where calling a judge just to be safe, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think as players, like even if you're playing a local armory event, you're playing a road national, you're playing whatever, if you have access to somebody to judge or knows the rules really well, call them over, ask them the question. Don't wait and try to figure it out on your own, because then that's when stuff starts to slip. Um, and on the negative side, I'm not saying this player did this, I'm saying in general, right? If you just plead ignorance to everything, and you are playing against somebody who maybe is being a little bit, wrong in what they're doing, then they see that as an opening to continue to do things. But if you keep them in check right off the bat, it's going to limit the amount of nefarious activities could be done during the match. So that's just one of the three things. The next one I wanted to show was this one. So we'll go and roll the clip. So what's going to happen here?
Yep.
I'll mute it. Is he puts his card down, which is Entwine Lightning, and this is a common thing that happens with new players and seasoned players. And I think this was an honest. This 100% was an honest mistake, because in all honesty, it hurts the player who's playing Entwine Lightning because he's going to give more info. But what he does is he plays Entwine Lightning. He creates an environment Lightning token, so this gets go again. And then he realizes, like, oh, I don't want to play Entwine Lightning because I don't want to waste it because it can be fused for go again. So I want to play Arcanic Shockwave instead, since I want to be able to, play Entwine Lightning later in the turn. So he picks up Entwine Lightning and puts down Arcanic Shockwave. So technically, is this correct? Technically, it's not. Once it leaves his hand, he's supposed to keep it. He's not supposed to swap it out. But this is a very common occurrence in the game that happens all the time. From the first day you play Flesh and Blood to a seasoned player will do this by accident. But it's also very common to ask the opponent, like, are you okay with this? Are you okay with me swapping my card? The opponent can say no. And if the opponent says no, then you don't swap it. And I've seen that happen. I've seen people put down the wrong thing to block with, and they're like, oh, I didn't want to block with that. Can I block with this? And the opponent's like, no, man, like that's your card. But this is also something that can be handled out at the player level. But looking at it, what you can do if you're not confident in, letting the player be able to swap it, but you also don't want to sound super ignorant, is you can call a judge over again. It's not hard to call a judge over and be like, Judge, I'm okay with him switching it, but what is the correct play here? Because I don't want either of us to get in trouble. Because you as the player on the right side of the table, right on this side of the table as you are looking at it, like, he possibly could get in trouble for not calling judges over constantly. And what you need to do is if this player because the problem with not calling a judge is, let's say the player who played the Entwine Lightning, right? Let's say he does it 3 more times this game. And then finally, after the third time, you call the judge over to say something. Well, now, in the judge's eyes, he's only done this once. Even if you say, hey, he's done this 3-4 times this game, he keeps continuing to do it, the judge probably isn't going to hand out a penalty because he's only seen the player do it once. Whereas if you call the judge over on this first play, not to be, like, pardon my language, not to be an asshole, but like just to be like, hey man, I just want to make the judge aware of this. That way it doesn't keep happening. Call the judge over, judge sees it. Now if the player does it 2 or 3 more times this game, then you can tell, like, okay, either this guy's doing it on purpose or he's just not paying attention like he should be at a national event. So he's going to receive a penalty. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind is, like, just call the judge. It's not a problem. This is a common thing that happens in a lot of games. You're not being the asshole by not calling the judge, so just keep that in mind. The third one that we're going to look at is this player plays Entwine Lightning, fuses with Entwine Lightning, and pulls it back. Now, this is one that you could say is a two-sided coin, right? One, as the player, as this player, right? Sorry, it's opposite on my other screen. If you see that and you don't catch it, you should catch it, right? Understand that, especially in the Tales of Aria set, you know that cards fuse with what? And you'd be like, what did you fuse it with that again? Because if it's the same card, then you obviously, like, probably isn't correct, right? That this guy is probably a new player, I'm guessing. And then from the Entwine Lightning player's perspective, like, this is one of those things where you can't tell if he's doing it on purpose or not. He did it really quickly, which was interesting. But, like, this is something that is just a misplay on both sides. Now, if this player did it several times during the game, then you know he's probably taking advantage of a new player. But this is one of those things where, like, the judge, if there is a judge at the table, needs to be able to catch that quickly. And if the judge isn't at the table, right, because there's not a judge at every table in these events, usually they're close by. This is something that you need to be aware of when your player plays a trigger. Really pay attention to what the trigger is, right? And sometimes if you're a new player, like you're not paying attention to what the trigger is and you're just super out of it and you're only focusing on your cards. But that's the biggest thing is like know the game to the best of your ability before you go to a national event. And the other thing is this is in round 7, right? This is not in round 1. These guys obviously have probably played the game a little bit, at least a little bit. So my guess is that, this player knows about that trigger. He should know about that trigger. And this player, you know, probably knew he messed up. But at the same time, like that's on the judges, that's on the players to be vigilant. And like, it's something we got to get better at as a community. When you sit down with a player, you can even be really nice about it, and just say that, hey man, I just want to let you know if any major misplays happen or mistriggers or something like that, I'm gonna call a judge over. Not because I don't trust you or don't like you. It's literally just to keep our game fair, and that way, if it keeps happening, if I keep doing something wrong or you keep doing something wrong, the judge is made aware, and we can play the game the way it's intended. If any player gets mad about that, then that means they're probably trying to do something they shouldn't be doing. Because any like normal good player would be like, yeah, man, that's fine. I totally understand that. That's cool. So just make sure that as a player that we're trying to play the game to the best of our ability. We're trying to keep the good people in the game, play the game the right way, right? If someone misses a trigger that's beneficial to them and then they bring it up later in the turn, call a judge over. um, if you miss a trigger yourself, you can ask the player, be like, hey, how do you want to handle this? Call a judge over, do what you got to do. Try to play the game as clean as you can so we don't have too many judge calls and the game doesn't get too bogged down. But overall, try to play the game as clean as we can. It's going to get better. Some of these players are new. Not every player that goes to a calling, not every player that goes to nationals is friggin' this amazing, great player. Some of them are new, and even seasoned players miss things, right? It just happens. And it's something that we'll get better at as a community, but we also need to keep people accountable, right? In the game, right? Make sure that they're understanding what they're doing, you understand what you're doing. And if you both have that mutual understanding, then the game goes a lot smoother and it's just a lot better. That's what I'll say on it. I'm not going to point fingers at people or do things like this person was 100% cheating, 100% not cheating. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm just here to make people aware, like there's different types of triggers that are missed. And if you're ever in doubt, just call a judge over, call someone over that knows the game really well, figure it out there, resolve it, and keep moving. So getting into a little bit nicer of things, and with my next video that will come up in right before nationals, U.S. nationals, talking about the meta, is the top 8. They didn't say what placing for these, but in the top 8 there was 4 Briar, 1 Bravo, 1 Viserai, and 2 Katsu. As you can see, a lot of aggro. I won't go into all of these, but basically the 4 Briars, I looked at them prior to. 3 of them were lightning builds, and 1 of them was an earth build. The Katsus, one of them was pretty much straight aggro, and the other one was, I would say, a little leaning to mid-range, but more aggro, kind of like right in the middle of aggro and mid-range. So you can basically call both of these like pretty good aggro decks. And then the Viserai deck was leaning aggro as well. Bravo is the only truly non-aggro deck in the top 8, which I think is a sign of where the format's at right now. Aggro is always good early, and then eventually it stables out. But what does this mean for U.S. nationals? I'll talk about that in my next video. But for this one, I think that Briar is really good, but I also think Briar can be teched against a little bit easier than, say, Chain did. I think you can use Ice against her really well. I think you can use Fatigue decks against her really well. She's not quite as broken as Chain was, in my opinion. The problem is now when you create a deck to solely beat Briar, can you create a deck that is good to beat Briar, but also decent against the rest of the format? When it comes to U.S. Nationals, I think that Briar is going to be a large portion of the field. I don't think it'll be quite as crazy as Chain was. I could see Briar being like 25% of the field, maybe 30, but I'd say 25% of the field's a good number. Because I think more people are trying to beat Briar than be Briar, if that makes sense in the United States. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's the video. I just want to get my take on it, see what was going on. kind of try to level it out a little bit, not try to point fingers so much, but just identify the issues and how we can get better as a community. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed the video. If you did and you made it this far, leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought, what other videos you'd like to see. Also go to other Flesh and Blood creators, leave a like and comment on their stuff. Try to grow this community as best we can and get better every day. But thank you all so much for tuning in to TCG Talk, and I'll talk to you all next time. Thank you.